Hello, my name is Yoshua Korn, and I'd like to personally invite you to Super Week 2018. Super Week is my favorite digital analytics conference of the year, and if you get your ticket before they're sold out, you'll be able to meet me in Hungary. But wait, there's more. This year, all three hosts of the Digital Analytics Power Hour will be doing a live podcast. Yes, you heard me correctly, a live podcast. Super Week is held at a hotel about 90 minutes north of Budapest, Hungary. That means Tim, Michael, and Mo won't be able to avoid you coming up to them, talking to them, or giving you an autograph, even if they tried to. For more information and to purchase your tickets before they're sold out, go to www.superweek.hu. The HU is for Hungary. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, even if you're just sitting at home alone listening on your headphones, let's make some noise for the Digital Analytics Power Hour!
Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. Tim, Michael, Mo, and the occasional guest discussing digital analytics issues of the day. Find them on Facebook at facebook.com/analyticshour and their website analyticshour.io. And now, the Digital Analytics Power Hour.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. This is episode 74. You know, if you're going to do the data science with the big data, or if you're an analyst who wants to explore some advanced tools, or you want to build a next generation app to sequence the human genome, or, well, the Google Cloud Platform has something for you. We wanted to talk about it. Even though this is specific to a set of products, all of us interact with Google day in and day out. Even if we're not using them from analytics, there's all kinds of tools inside the Google Cloud Platform. So we've assembled a crack team from 3 different continents to talk about it. From Australia, there's Mo Kiss.
Hi, how you going?
Hi, Mo.
Hi.
From the United States of America, it's Tim Wilson.
Hey, guys.
And myself, Michael Helbling. Howdy, Tim.
Oh.
And from Europe, we have the new British invasion. Hey, you, get off of my cloud. It's Mark Edmondson. Mark is currently the data insight developer at IH Nordic. It's a little bit, I feel like that one sort of underdoes it a little bit, just title-wise, just FYI.
Note to Steam.
Yeah, so he's also Google's developer expert for the cloud platform, so he's official. He is a well-known rock star in the R and the analytics world. He's created a number of awesome packages for R, especially the Google Analytics R package, many other ones, the BigQuery R package, Google Compute Engine R, Search Console R, and he's the co-creator with Tim Wilson of Dartistics.com.
So we've come full circle. So we're back to the lowly level of the title of Data Insight Developer.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's certainly a pleasure, no matter how junior you are, Mark, to welcome you on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Any mistakes that we make on the podcast, especially Tim and I, it's because we had to get up at a really early hour to do this so that we could accommodate all continents. So, cheers, howdy, good day. Let's get this show going. So, Mark, maybe just to get us going, I always love for people to start with there's a little more of their background so that people listening to the show can get to know you a little better. How did you find your way into this exciting role as a data insight developer at IH Nordic?
Yeah, and if you want to include how you wound up in Copenhagen, if that works its way in.
It kind of does, too. Yeah. Actually, I started, I was actually in a band in Cornwall. And I needed some money. Yeah, I needed some money for my van, which was a very expensive van to run. So I started this job as an internet assistant. So if you're thinking lowly job titles, that would be the first one. And that
Wait, were you actually helping the internet? Like, were you actually
well, it turned out I was just doing. I had to.
So it was him and Tim Berners-Lee.
Yeah,
it was basically just looking at like 200 websites a day and seeing if they would link to our clients in SEO. So that was very glamorous, and did that for ages and ages. And then I got into SEO, and then I got into sort of SEO management, and then they needed us in Copenhagen because I was based in Cornwall, and Copenhagen looked like a very sophisticated place to go. So I went there, and it was nice, you know. So I stayed a bit longer, and then I was going to come back, but then I met my wife, my lovely wife, Sana, who just got a kid with, Rose. So, and basically I stayed in Copenhagen, stayed in Denmark, and then I got into analytics through that because the NetBooster offices was sort of the analytics place where I was working. Then I left to go to, before that I started getting into R and forecasting and prediction and all of this. And that's where kind of programming started to enter the thing. Then I left to go to Wunderman and eventually IH Nordic. And then basically through the R stuff and through the Google Developer Expert program that I got on through the Google Analytics, which was through the R stuff perhaps, then I got into the Google Cloud. And it was definitely like, the progression from going from Excel to R really kind of opened up my mind about what you could do with data. You know, there's no like limitations of cell lengths or row lengths, things like that. And then I've experienced a similar thing going from R locally to R in the cloud and just the cloud computing in general. Just the sort of things that you can do is so much exponentially more, greater. So, so then I just started doing that. And because of the GDE program, I get some credits to play around with the Google Cloud Platform. So, and I think a big case for it was because we had lots of Google Analytics 360 or Google Analytics Premium clients at the time. And they were using that BigQuery integration that they have. And just using BigQuery and how awesome that was was the sort of in to the rest of the cloud platform. And then when I was writing my R packages for Google Analytics, for that, I basically written all the authentication stuff for that, for Search Console and Google Analytics. And it was a very small step to sort of start using that authentication methods for the other APIs, such as the cloud platform. So that's where Compute Engine and BigQuery are and things like that came out of. And that's kind of where we are now, really.
So not really technical then, we would say.
Now I would say I'm probably technical, yeah. But before that, not so much, I guess. But I really like that I've had that kind of transition because I think part of the job is knowing how to speak to the clients and how to present and how to actually work on the problems that they're wanting to be worked on. So that is definitely something which is a plus compared to someone maybe who've just been coding, all their career or something like that. So I feel lucky in that.
We'll get to the cloud questions here in a minute, but what kind of band were you in?
It was a bit edgy, alt rock, trying to do something different, all of that. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
Like
all right, no. But seriously, so if you go out to the cloud.google.com and look around, there's so much there. So maybe just as a starting point, as digital analytics people, where should people start? What would be the first place where people should start dipping their toe in?
Well, just from personal experience, definitely I think BigQuery is a good place to start because once you've got everything in there, you can kind of do jobs that you're already doing in Excel perhaps or R and sort of, but on a greater scale. So that's definitely first product that I came across that I was doing.
What's the actual line between the Google Cloud platform? Like when poking around, and so BigQuery was the first Google Cloud platform tool that you were using, or were you
definitely that one?
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because like Google Analytics is not part of the cloud platform. Data Studio, I think, is part of the cloud platform? Is there a hard line, or is it kind of fuzzy like the edge of a cloud?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I get it. It is kind of evolving a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot of services that were there before that are now being kind of integrated in. So you would actually say that App Engine was the first sort of Google Cloud service offering. And App Engine is amazing. It was, I think, ahead of its time in a lot of ways. But the thing is that you had to be like Google to use it. You had to be using the Java or Python and take advantage of all the things. So what they've done recently is they've tried to sort of fill in that gap between sort of what your systems you have locally and then moving all of that into the cloud and then maybe evolving that into the sort of deeper platforms, the more platform as a service. So the actual cloud platform, there's like compute engine, there's cloud storage, and those are probably the two fundamental things because they're kind of the services on top of that are all kind of maybe built with those building blocks. So things like BigQuery, why it's good is that there's all these computers that are kind of being launched underneath your query. You just see the end results, but what's happening under the hood is that a lot of compute engine instances are being launched to service your query, say, and they're pulling that data from cloud storage, and then they're giving you the results. And what Google are basically doing is that they've been working on this infrastructure for 20 years to service their Google search, and they're now exposing that infrastructure to us. And because they've been kind of doing this for so long, I mean, a lot of the big data technologies that are used in other platforms like a Hadoop and stuff, they all started as Google kind of papers and things like that. Hadoop was originally from a Google paper, and then Yahoo went on and improved it, I think. But in the meantime, whilst everyone was sort of, getting to grips with that, they were working internally on their own systems, and those systems are kind of getting released. So BigQuery was their kind of evolution of Hadoop, say, that they were working on internally, and then we sort of get the results afterwards. So what they're really looking to do now is exposing a lot of that infrastructure. And Google, are responsible for 40% of the world's internet traffic, right? They have been doing this stuff for a long time. They've got dedicated infrastructure, and then they saw Amazon sort of take over all of the cloud computing business, and they're thinking, well, we should have to get a piece of that, and because the GCP platform, the Google Cloud platform, isn't one. They're not dominating that industry for a change, right? I mean, they only have maybe sort of 10% of the industry, so they're really kind of like looking to do that because who knows how much longer AdWords is going to be bankrolling all of Google, because we've got all of this Alexa stuff and voice search and all of that where, it's going to be hard to squeeze in an AdWords next to your search. And that's where they make, I think, 80% of their revenue still is from that. So they're going to have an alternative to that. And I think the cloud platform is one of their big bets of where they're going to making their money.
So it's, on the one hand, my perception is there's all this Google stuff and I'm using it all the time in all these different areas. But you mentioned like the Google Cloud Platform, whatever their market share, it's smaller if it's 10%, 15, whatever. When large organizations, like if they are all about Amazon, does that become a real hurdle to say, oh, here's the competitor? Or are IT organizations moving to the point where they are very comfortable with saying, sure, we've got multiple cloud things. There might even be some benefits to having a couple of different core backbones? Or I know they occasionally run into things like Snowplow, right, is still not, but doesn't really play super nice with Google Cloud Platform. It's more of a AWS.
Yeah, but that's coming. That's coming. I spoke to Michael actually at the Copenhagen Measure Camp. Sorry, Super Week. Measure Camp, Copenhagen. I spoke to Snowplow there, and they were talking about them moving it onto the GCP soon.
Really?
So yeah.
Because we run both GAP and Snowplow, and we use both. So we use Redshift and BigQuery. And kind of, so depends on what I want to look at. I would go to one of the two. Yeah.
So what I would say about that is definitely Google know this. I would say So Amazon were definitely there first, and they deserve all the credit and all of that for doing that. But I think they're kind of generation one, and the cloud platform. In my opinion, the Google one is easier to use, and the APIs are nicer and things like that. So people are calling that kind of generation two. And there's just certain features like pricing. Like if you spin up a Amazon instance, you pay per hour, whereas in the GCP you pay per minute. So you can kind of like make savings on that one. And it's just it seems, but I'm definitely biased in that regard. So I'll reserve the judgment for other people to say. But I would say that if you're going to pick a stack, I mean, definitely I would try and stick to one stack, because a lot of the costs, so that's either Amazon or Google Cloud Platform or Azure or even IBM or something like that, because a lot of the costs that you have is for moving data. And if you're moving data within the stack, so from BigQuery to Google Cloud Compute, you don't pay any money. But if you move it from Compute Engine to Redshift, say, on the Amazon stack, then you will be paying money for that transfer. So if you've got this integration of systems on lots of different stacks, that's probably more complication and expense than you need. Definitely keep it simple. So pick one that your developers like. But I think a lot of the motivation behind Google going open source and a lot of the stuff they're doing, so Kubernetes and Docker and things like that, is what they're doing is they're making it much easier for people to move between stacks. So it is now possible to have all of your stuff in a Kubernetes platform with lots of Docker containers. Maybe we'll get into that later on, and then move that kind of wholesale completely into AWS or GCP and have the same services sort of more quickly. Then it means that you're not locked into one of those stacks as much as you were before, basically. And the reason Google is pushing this so much is obviously because they want to make the pain of switching from Amazon to them, as smooth as possible, rather than, it being costly.
That has seems like little shades of the part of the tag management pitch of, separate, and then you can switch out your analytics platform, even though you weren't really going to do that. Because that does require, and I know my own experiences, and by my own experiences, I mean hitting up Mark and Jason Packer constantly trying to understand the Docker and spinning stuff up. There is an added, to make that portability, there is incremental upfront effort to actually include that, and another layer of complexity, even if it's not a ton of complexity, right? It's not.
Absolutely. It's another layer of virtualization, right? So you're kind of spinning up a virtual machine, then putting a virtual container within that machine that's running codes that may be spinning up other virtual machines and things like that. So it's definitely another layer of abstraction. But it's definitely very popular. I mean, Kubernetes, which is the kind of thing that makes it possible, I think is the most starred repo on GitHub, and with TensorFlow being second. So it's very popular, and like all of the cloud people are kind of embracing it, because that's the future. That's what people are realizing, I think.
Again, the visual imagery of embracing a cloud, it feels very very empty and sad and unfulfilled.
Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely the way it's all going. If you read any of the kind of more DevOps blogs, the cloud is, because simply you can't invest as much money unless you're in a massive company. You can't invest as much money into your own infrastructure than these guys can, and they've got it all kind of they're ready, waiting for you per minute. I mean, to run your own BigQuery locally would cost you millions to do. So if you can make that money back, and it's much nicer to use as well. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be doing stuff that I'm doing if it was all kind of locally on servers and stuff like that. The bar has come so far down now that, one little analyst here can be sort of messing around with this stuff. Whereas, this still happens if, say, you're in institutions that don't embrace the clouds, that you've got a whole sort of IT team and DevOps team with their opinions and all of that you have to negotiate as well to do the same jobs. So, I mean, when I've been speaking to IT teams as well, they've been like, you go and do this rather than me having to do all of this stuff for you. They're embracing it as well. So, it's definitely a rising tide, as I'd say, of of where things are going at the moment.
I'm just really curious to hear a little bit about, because you kind of talk about how, Google's growing its share of the market, or will in time, and some of the moves they're making. I'm be interested to hear a little bit about your own journey, and particularly, I feel like I probably bother you enough about our stuff, and I constantly am talking to Tim about it, but it seems like the Google stack isn't really compatible with R, and that seems to be the path that you were kind of going on. So how did that all kind of fit together? That
I think it is compatible with R now. Now I've made these packages, so I mean, I did have a need to make those,
great job, Google.
But I mean, definitely it's not just me. I mean, Big R Query by Hadley Wickham has been around for a while. I think that's the one you were using you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And that is, that's got sort of first class support. And the thing is with the reason I'm able to make these packages is because they've got this sort of JSON API for all of their packages, all of their services, basically. Whenever they make a service, there's an API that comes associated with it. You can even generate all of your kind of R code now using that API. It kind of writes all the functions for you. So they support first they support Python and Java, I think are the major two. But then they also released this JSON API, which you can use to build your own libraries in any language. And that's what I've done. That's what I've done now.
I feel like you're not representing this as well as I had the memory. I think I might have actually been in Denmark. It was like overnight, and you just like casually came in and said, "Oh yeah, I just generated a package for every Google API last night." So, right, that's what you're saying is that Google has gotten. I mean, we can always complain about documentation and support and the robustness of things, but they seem to, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, they seem to have, because they've been doing this for so long, they sort of get the infrastructure beyond just the extreme back end to the point that you sort of had a light bulb went off and said, oh, well, in theory, if I write this one bit of code, it will generate these packages. Not super well documented, not super usable. That's not what you actually published out. That's not what all the packages are. And that's partly to their credit that they literally said, we have sufficient good practices and an Uber architecture in place that we can do that.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
Okay.
Like for instance, all of their APIs, cloud APIs, are published through a similar system, and even that's been exposed now. Cloud endpoints, so you could actually use that system yourself for all of your stuff. But then,
so how do you feel about the movie Inception? Because I feel like you keep relaying the plot of Inception by virtual within virtual,
right, yeah,
virtual,
right.
and now
it's not its best, but you know.
No,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of iteration, recursion. But yeah, they do have I get the impression that the Amazon stuff is a lot more kind of segregated, a lot more kind of different teams working on different stuff, and it's not all kind of built together. Someone correct me if I'm wrong about that. Whereas the Google stuff they always have this standard, and that's why I could write a standard library for it, because it usually always comes out in the same manner. So there's not too much like re-understanding the stuff that's coming out. Yeah, so it just feels more evolved in that respect, definitely.
And does that also mean backward compatibility from? I know definitely within R, like anytime I go in and say update packages, there are a ton of my packages that need to be updated. So in the open source world, there are lots of little updates that are happening.
Yeah, I mean that is the danger of open source.
Yeah, but the Google infrastructure, are they really pretty good about backward compatibility? Is it?
Well, yeah, but once they get out of beta, but I mean things are perpetually in beta sometimes, right? I mean, even Gmail's in beta for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. And that basically reserves them the right to change things backwardly in a backward incompatible way. So, but once it does hit non-beta, once it's released, then yes. Yeah. I mean, you've got an example of that with the Google Analytics, JavaScript, collection APIs. I mean, you could probably still use Urchin one, I guess. They definitely haven't retired, version 2. Yet, and we're on version 4. So once you've got kind of that version, then yeah, you can be pretty sure it's going to be supported for quite a while.
I want to ask a little bit about the Google Stack, and just like, I looked at it yesterday, and the first thought that I had was that I was absolutely a little bit intimidated. Like, there's a huge list of products. I mean, I've mentioned that I dabble with BigQuery, which, to be honest, I kind of forgot existed after I used it at my last employer. And it wasn't until someone joined the team that was like, why aren't you using this? And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. But I guess you mentioned that you had some credits and you started playing around. Have you had a look at any of their machine learning packages or anything like that? And I guess for someone that wants to, kind of test the waters a bit. I mean, other than BigQuery, what are your suggestions? Because my understanding was that a lot of the stuff you need Python to be able to access it. Other than, I mean, like, you're a very technical person, so
yeah. Well, Python is definitely the first supported language for it, and Java. But I don't touch Java. It's too verbose for me. But the machine learning APIs that are just coming out are really, really cool. And you can use those in the browser, actually, if you go to their page about them. And that is one I've just put together into a R package as well. So you've got it in R as well if needed. But so I've just been concentrating on the language ones. So it's like speech to text, and then translation, and then entity analysis. So feasibly, you can sort of talk into a microphone in Danish, get it translated to English, and then use entity analysis to see what the person's talking about, and then give it back to something. But from going back to your previous point, I think it's very much you need to have the right, like all analytics, you need to have the right question to answer. You need to have the right, you need to have a problem. And that is definitely how all of what I've been doing has come from. I've had a problem, and I've needed to solve it, and then I've looked around for what to do. So I think it helps if you know kind of roughly what's available, the capabilities. Because I think if you're just browsing around on the thing, because PubSub versus BigQuery versus Cloud SQL, what is actually the use of these? I've just done the Coursera course in data engineering. Just the sort of fundamentals one. And that was really cool to just sort of give you an overview about all the services. Because I've touched on, I don't know, probably about 25%, I would say, of all the stuff that's on there. But just knowing the potential of the rest of it, it means that when someone comes to me with a problem and says, I need a globally distributed database that will handle credit card transactions in real time, I can go, okay, Spanner, that's what Spanner does. And I've not had that yet. I'd love to have a problem like that to come in, but But for instance,
well, how strictly do you adhere to that? And I feel like it's always going to be more productive to have a gun to your head with, I have to solve this problem and I have to go find the way to solve it. But do you like the Google language was that really one where you guys had a client who just came and asked? I guess sometimes I feel like maybe my clients, I'm not managing to tease the bigger, sexier questions out of them.
Maybe I should mention my working arrangements, because I didn't mention that. But I've consciously chose when I moved to Denmark, give myself 20% time, the Google stuff. So I worked 4 days a week at NetBooster, and at IAH Nordic I worked 3 days a week. And the rest of the time is spent on the working on longer term projects and working on this. And this is definitely the reason I'm speaking to you today, and why I'm doing well in my career, is that I've had time to sit there. So maybe what you were saying, you don't have the time and bandwidth to grok all this stuff and get all of that. I've had like 20%, almost 40% of my time sometimes dedicated to doing it. Which sounds crazy when you think.
But I don't want anybody to use that as a cop out to say they can't do that. No,
but I think it does.
That's awesome.
It requires dedicated resources, and
right.
But I think that is that's definitely helped me a lot in doing, and I think I'm got a better job and better situation because of that time. Yeah, so thinking about it, I mean, and that's half the reason I went to IAH Nordic in the first place, because they kind of agree with that philosophy. I mean, some companies won't employ you if you say you want a day off a week, obviously. But in IH Nordic, they've given everyone Friday off. So everyone here works 4 days a week. And I'm the exception, working 3 days a week. So it's kind of fits with the culture a little bit.
Well, I think there's a little bit of when you're an analyst and you've got a tricky problem.
Yeah.
You do have a bias towards going towards something you're comfortable with. And it sounds like a lot of your career has been exploring the things that you don't know, and it's worked really well for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, for lots of people out there, that's a really scary thing to do. And yeah.
So the Google, going back to the Google language thing, the reason I did that was because of the whole fake news Trump stuff that happened on Twitter and all of that. And
you're welcome.
And that was a problem. And I was just like, and it almost ruined Twitter for me. I adore Twitter, but I can go on there because it was just too much. I think Twitter is completely the wrong medium to discuss politics because it's too, clickbait, reactionary, all of that. So I wanted a way of giving people more knowledge about how much they can trust other people on Twitter, and how much are you regurgitating what other people in your sphere think versus an actual original balanced opinion. And I didn't want it to be biased. I have one, I think one of the major problems is that the camps are getting further and further apart. And, it's like completely vilified over there, and they're just, loony crazies as well. So it's just sort of, there's less compromise and there's less sort of agreement and all this. And this is what kind of politics needs. So I that's why I did the Google language thing, is that it gives me the tools to do that. And I'm kind of working on that on the back burner.
So you're not really the kind of person who tackles big problems. You just kind of go for these little niche little.
Well, what happens? I go for the big problems. It fails, but then I've got the skills to handle smaller problems. I think that's probably more accurate. What happens? Yeah,
that's actually, I like it.
Well, and I think actually that brings up something I think is really helpful to consider, which is the best way to get in and after these things, because there's so many tools you could potentially use here and AWS, any of these platforms, is to think or have a problem you're trying to solve first.
Yeah.
So establish, and this is sort of how I talk to my team, because actually there's a bunch of people in our group as well are using some of these, and we're doing projects on Google Cloud Platform, and it's really exciting. But I always say, what's our business problem that we're solving? What are we doing to drive something forward with this? Because that will give us the guidance we need to go use whatever tools we're trying to do. Because a lot of times I see people be like, hey, look what I can do with this cool tool. Awesome. It's a great start. Now, how do we apply that to the set of problems which are immutable or always the same?
And that is the most difficult bit, definitely.
But the
tools are just like, yeah.
But I feel like, honestly, this podcast is part of the tool for me on that front, is that it can be very, very hard to actually broaden the definition of what sorts of questions could be answered, or what,
Yeah.
So
like any tool, Tim, I agree with you. But it will expand, but you have to start in, and then as you learn all these platforms and tools, I think it expands your world again. And you have a new set of questions and objectives you could go after.
Well, but I think that's where, like, the data engineering Coursera, I think there's something to be said because of open courseware, that there are reasons to say, I don't know exactly, I don't have a problem. I'm not going to go take the data engineering course, Google Cloud Platform Coursera course. I don't have a problem I'm trying to solve right now on that, but that is just a way to broaden my horizon, so that then I can start to maybe up level. I just said up level. Oh my god!
Mm-hmm. You can make up new words. That's fine. Yeah.
Hold on a moment. Yeah. That I can start actually realizing there's some bigger questions that I could solve. Like there is I guess a chicken and an egg sort of process where you do need to do some dabbling and exploration to then come and ask a hard question that then forces you to really build that out.
But I've got an example of that. If you recently I've been looking at kind of the BigQuery streaming and things like that, and the App Engine and all that. And then we had an inquiry coming about Internet of Things analytics. So from that, they were saying, you're doing digital analytics on the website. Can't we just move that data source to being a stream of data coming from, bins and light bulbs and things like that? And because I'd had that experience of the BigQuery streaming and knowing the capabilities of that, I was like, that is a way of doing it. We could do that. It's feasible. You've got a solution to the problem that is presented. So that was one example.
Can we define App Engine real quick for me? I mean, that was a little bit, even though I've heard it, I'm not sure I fully understand what
and this is the
App
problem.
Engine, early on, you said that was like the core.
Absolutely. It was the problem. It's the first thing they released. And basically what happens is that you had to upload Python or Java. And this is one of the problems. You had to use Python or Java. But you upload Python to App Engine. And then there's a free tier. So if you only use that code a little bit, then it's free. And it gives you a website, basically, that will run that Python code every time you hit a certain URL, say. Okay?
Okay.
So that Python code can do anything you like. So you could connect it to other cloud platform stuff, like launching VMs or downloading from Google Analytics, all of that stuff. And then also create a website on top. And it scales as well. So things like, I think Snapchat is built on top of it. So you've got this free tier where it's free for you to play around with. But then if you ever want to scale it up and reach 1 billion users, all you have to do is, a bit of configuration and then pay the money. And then the same code can be kind of all of that. So it's scaling underneath. And what's happening is that you are just uploading the code. You've got no knowledge of the computers that are launching to satisfy the demands of that. And that's where you're getting into a truly platform as a service cloud thing, right? Because you don't have to worry about the servers. You just let them take care of it. And that's kind of what BigQuery does, right? Because it's actually launching, say, 50 computers to service your SQL queries. And why it's so fast is they're basically running a lot of computers at the same time. But
literally, like Snapchat is or was, all of the actual stuff was actually.
Let me just check that. But it was one of those two. But 1 billion users, no problem on it. It is Snapchat. Yeah.
So that gets you out of the world of we're configuring our web server that we've got. It is your web server, but it's inherently built to be.
And it's built on Google's infrastructure. Yeah. Now the problem with that is it was too specific to Google, and and there's still lots of stuff which is good, but So what they've done is filled it all in. So say you've got your SQL database locally. If you wanted to move that to an App Engine thing, you'd have to reconfigure it into the App Engine's data store thing, right? Which is much too much bother, to see the gains. So what they've done now is introduce kind of intermediate services. So Cloud SQL basically is you take your SQL database that's locally and you just move it into the cloud. And then you get exactly the same as your local one, but it's in the cloud and we manage stuff for you a little bit. So that's kind of the first step. That's it. That's all it is. And you can do that with Computer Engine. You can move all your little laptops that you've got in the corner of your room, start up a GCE instance instead, all of that. And that's the first step. And that's kind of what they're doing now. Another thing is Hadoop and Spark. You've got a huge Hadoop cluster running in your bank or something like that. You can fire up Dataproc and you can move your Hadoop cluster straight into that. So that's what they're trying to do. They're giving you that kind of first step in. And then from there, you can start to separate CPU from storage and things like that, and start to move on. Because I was wondering, should I be using Dataproc, which is sort of Hadoop on the cloud? If you're using BigQuery already, there isn't actually much call to go to use Dataproc. Maybe you want to use some of the Spark stuff, machine learning or stuff. But if you're actually BigQuery is a kind of a superior product for a lot of cases. So you wouldn't start with that. But if you've already got legacy systems, that's the thing. You need to, it's a lot of pain and hassle to move it all into a new system. So they're giving you a sort of more of a route into just moving that into the cloud.
So how, for IT organizations that are already managing a big budget for their IT infrastructure, presumably they're working with Google and the way things are being charged, they can sort of try to estimate. I know when I had some very, very small things on the Google Cloud platform, and it was like $37 a month. I was doing nothing with it. It was just sitting there. And again, went back and forth with a few people, and it's like, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that. I think now I have this like between $8 and $9 monthly charge, which I'm not really doing anything with it. But how does at times it seems like the cloud stuff is insanely free. Like when I've had clients who go to GA360 and they get their BigQuery credits every month, and generally what we're doing actually totally covers that. So you're like, oh, BigQuery is essentially free, but that may also be like it's the free sample of the crack cocaine. Like how does that, because you mentioned a few times like you have these credits. Well, if you didn't have these credits, in all the stuff that you're dabbling with, would you be spending $20 US a month or $200 US?
Well, for instance, I mean, we don't have credits at work, and we're using $100 a month on that at the moment. And I think I've had a recent blog post about this because, if you just move your laptop into a cloud compute engine instance, then basically you're going to be overpaying. It's like more expensive than just actually buying a laptop every 2 years. So what's the point? Why would you do that? Yeah, so that's why it's only the first step of moving all these stuff straight in. And a lot of the time, the cost is associated with keeping that instance running all the time and just kind of treating it like your laptop. But you have to have a kind of sort of a different philosophy as well, a sort of change of how you treat computing in your mind as well. And that change is to separate out the hard drive and the compute. And so to move all of your kind of data into cloud storage, which is dirt cheap, that's like very, very cheap to store stuff, but then only turn on the compute stuff when you need it. So when you charge per minute, when you're logging in to RStudio, say, and you only need it for between the hours of 9 and 5, say, only have it on during that time and then turn it off, and then know that your kind of data is sitting safely in the cloud storage, which is cheap. And similarly, if you're, and BigQuery is an example of that because it's actually storing all of that data in cloud storage, say. And so you're getting charged very minimal amount of money for when you have your data in there. But when you do queries, when you're actually using compute, that's when the charges come, right? And they can be quite substantial if you're doing it. But it's on demand, yeah.
They store your punch cards for you, Tim. They just charge you to process them.
It's kind of it.
Well, so there are two challenges. Is one, I think that many, if not most, analysts are working in an environment where even if for them to incur a very small charge, the larger the company, it can be even that much harder. Even if your manager says, sure, go do this, but I'm just going to get a slightly varying invoice from Google. Like I'm going to have to, there is a challenge with even paying a small amount on a monthly basis that varies, that all of a sudden, forget IT, now you're running through whatever your accounting infrastructure is to get, a credit card. So I think just recognize, or you just say, you know what, I'm going to do this personally, and it's not enough. I'm growing my career, but that's one weird area. And then the other is you started to touch on it of saying, well, if you set this up smartly, and that was definitely my experience, was I did not have the skills to say, what's the smart way to set this up so that I'm not paying for this stuff that I'm not actually using. So on the one hand, their pricing seems awesome because it's really charging you minute level computing and very cheap storage. But on the other hand, it's also very easy to say, well, the easiest thing is just to be very inefficient.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a DevOps guy, and we got to find those people.
I think it's like most things. Like if you go for the real platform as a service stuff, which is BigQuery, Google App Engine, then the free tiers apply because that's kind of what they want you to be doing. Whereas if you're getting a bit more kind of fundamental and you're using compute engine and things like that, then it starts to get more, they kind of start presuming you're more of a DevOps person. So they've got this sort of sliding scale of technical chops needed, as you're going. And I don't think you're expected to know the full stack for anyone.
But I have to say and Tim completely stole my thunder, as per usual. that's probably a lesson that I learnt the hard way when I started playing around with BigQuery. It was like, oh, I wanted to do more. I wanted to pull more data. I wanted to do things at a really big scale and then roll it up right at the end. And I normally save all my embarrassing questions until after the podcast finished, like I said earlier. But tonight I'm just going for it right now. And there is something a little bit dangerous, right, about when you're an analyst and you're still playing around, you don't kind of know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, you hit your BigQuery cap and everyone's like, how did you run a query that did that? And it's this like really tough lesson.
How did you run a query?
I don't. Yeah. I still. Anyway, I'll send you the code.
Yeah.
I'll send you the R code. But I did it.
Yeah, because I mean, from my experience, we've never hit that limit. So it must have been a monster query.
Hey Mo, that means you've done something that Mark has never done.
Great job. I'm not sure that's something to be proud of. But I guess what I'm saying is like the room for error for an analyst that's kind of trying to learn that doesn't have those skills yet, it's a bit higher than when you're just playing around saying Google Analytics.
Absolutely, and it can get. I've had expensive mistakes as well, so that is definitely hit me as well. And what I would say is definitely set up the custom alerts on the billing.
Yeah.
So that will send you an email when it says suddenly you've spent 50%. We've got one for 100%. Say we typically spend $100 a month at work, so I've got a billing alert that should come at the end of the month saying you spent $100 a month. Great, but then I've also got one set at 300 and 500%, just in case something goes crazily wrong and something like that, and you come in the morning and all that. So that is definitely something to consider when you're going onto the cloud, because you do have that scale, and it is all just sort of pay more money, get more stuff. You can potentially scale before you're you're ready to do so.
Before you're ready, yep. Yeah. Like to share my lessons learned.
Well, and then there's also, you look at the different tools, and I think it's also sometimes confusing to figure out, well, what's the best one for the thing that I'm trying to do? Because some of them really kind of seem to cross over each other a little bit too. So like,
yeah, I would say that's more the case for AWS, actually, from what I've seen. But yeah, sorry, carry on what you saying.
No, it's fine. I mean, like, I'm looking, it's like, okay, well, Cloud Data Lab, all right. Then BigQuery, all right. Which one would I use for what thing? So it's like, okay, I kind of understand what BigQuery does, but Cloud Data Lab says you can visualize large data sets. But I thought that's what Google Data Studio was for. So it's like, those kinds of things are where I think it's hard for people to know, like, here's what. And so I think, honestly, as a community, we probably depend on people like you, Mark, to like help guide us through some of this stuff a lot of times.
I think that's what this program, the GDE program, is about. It's about putting blog posts out there, putting out all the use cases for X and Y and things like that. Because they're giving you the sort of tools, and what you do on it isn't sort of defined. So there's definitely a lot of blog posts that you can do. There's on the Google Developer Expert website. There's quite a lot of solutions based articles and things like that, which kind of describe things like that. I would definitely look out for those, and I could maybe do a few links to help in that regard. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of reading.
Sure.
To keep them
I want to ask quickly, if you could go back in time before you started playing around with the Google Cloud Stack, and you just wish that you knew one weird little thing about how something worked, what do you think? What's that one thing that you wish you'd known when you started out that after all this time,
OAuth2?
Don't start me on authentication this week, Tim.
How to become a famous musician.
Yeah. God, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that one.
Okay. There's plenty of time. And if it takes some time, we can always tweet it out.
To what extent are you using the Cloud Machine Learning Engine today to develop the best and most popular rock songs?
Yeah, but it wasn't out then. I'm presuming that, I mean, it's such an evolving thing as well, because there's all the stuff that comes out new. And yes, the machine learning stuff, I think I mean, that is their big bet. Because they are playing catch up in this, they are trying to be the machine learning cloud and all this. So TensorFlow, I don't know if you know, TensorFlow is a Google project that they, like the Hadoop paper, they just released the paper. For TensorFlow, they've actually released the GitHub repo, and it's all open source. So they're kind of guiding it, but it's completely open source. You can go and see the chat. And that was like from their DeepMind acquisition. Those guys have helped do that. And then you can deploy TensorFlow on Cloud ML, which is a sort of more platform as a service stuff. So that's more like your BigQuery App Engine thing. So you have machine learning trained APIs in the cloud. And that's something that we're using at the moment here, and it's very exciting to do that. So you've got these kind of pre-trained APIs for text-to-speech, videos, and things like that. They're kind of taken care of. But this is where you've got much more customization about what you want to be predicting or using machine learning for. So that is, I would say, get into that as soon as possible, perhaps, if it was around back in the day.
And now we reveal that we don't actually have Mark. This is actually this is using Google Cloud Singularity, and Mark wrote a little.
Yeah, I pre-programmed this talk earlier. Yeah.
Say something in that language you made up. No, I'm just kidding.
I can tell dance. Yeah. Got a Danish version. Yeah.
No. Anyway, Tim is really eager to wrap up for some reason. I don't know why. No, we do have to start to wrap up. This is really exciting. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
For everyone who was going to email us and tell us we were too salesy, deal with it. I think everybody needs to know about this stuff, and I think it was fine. We just get, not you, Mark, you did a fine job, although I thought you were a little heavy on the Nordic. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
Really?
Not at all.
I'm sitting at work, so I have to mention them at least.
No, of course not. I'm so kidding.
All those people who were going to send their resumes to Michael are now going to send them to IH Nordic because,
hey, now...
Did you say 4 days a week?
But I hope you're using the Cloud Jobs API from Google Cloud Platform.
Not yet, no. Good point.
No, anyways, one thing we like to do on the show is called Do the Last Call. We go around the horn, just talk about something we've seen that's interesting, we think might be interesting to the audience. Mark, why don't we kick it off with you?
On the spot. Oh dear, it's going to be very nerdy, obviously.
Jeez.
Yeah, but
we just spent an hour talking about the Google Cloud Platform.
More nerdy than
that. Please, Mark, think of our audience.
Okay. But I'm going to go with it anyway. But I've been using this new MailMate email thing, and it's amazing. And you can write in Markdown. You can write your emails in Markdown, which if you don't know, Markdown is a way of styling. Dartistics is written in Markdown, for instance. So you can write emails in Markdown. So it's brilliant. So everyone thinks I've labored, hours and hours on these emails, and actually it's, just Markdown. So, and it's got lots of nice filters and things like that. So MailMate, Mac mail editor thing. That's it.
So it actually takes your Markdown and then we'll convert that to HTML and send it out, or what's the so it's
a Mac. It's a Mac.
It's a
mail
Mac
thing.
Mac app, or it's
it's a Mac mail program.
Mail.
Yeah.
Oh.
Replacing the other one. MailMate.
Nice. I may actually get out of the browser. Try that out. Michael, you wanna go second?
Yeah. Throw things out of order.
I would love to. So, actually, this is right on the spot for this kind of episode, because certainly a lot of people want to get into this, but they run into problems, or they hit their BigQuery cap somehow, and not anyone we know. But I recently ran across a website called datahelpers.org. It was started by Angela Bassa, who's the director of data science at iRobot, I think. And she just gathered a listing from Twitter of people who are willing to help answer questions in different areas of specialty in sort of the data science and data engineering community. So There's people on there. They've got their Twitter profiles. I didn't see yours on there, Mark, but maybe you should get on there. But
it's a nice idea. Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool people. And so as you're exploring some of these things, there may be people who'd be willing to help out, answer questions, things like that. So that was my last call, datahelpers.org.
Oh, that is cool.
Well, now I'm really confused. I don't know who to go.
Tim.
Yeah, Tim.
You go, Tim.
Tim.
Go, Tim. We're saving the best for last today.
I will chime in because it is also a website that also starts with data. So this came by way of Adam Greco pointed me to this a while back. And it also relates to this episode. If you're looking to dive in and you're thinking, but I need a meaty problem to try to solve. So datakind.org, you guys familiar with that? It is basically, it may sound very similar to a little web analytics thing that used to exist, but it's basically solving problems through data. So there will be problems thrown out or nonprofits that are saying, we're trying to uncover potential corruption in various countries, and there's open data, and we want to put together a team. So it's like an opportunity to volunteer doing stuff with data to support like pretty ambitious and nifty large scale problems.
Awesome.
So that's a
bingo,
a way to spend some time.
Well, if you're looking for a problem to solve,
yeah.
I really feel great about following that up.
Whoa, what's your last call?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's this new episode of BoJack Horseman.
Bob wants to talk about data greedy.
How?
A website where you just grab everybody else's data. All right, sorry, Mo. Go ahead.
So, my sister got me onto this website, and now it makes my world look so small because I spent much of yesterday plugging in different colors and seeing what other palettes you could use for data visualizations. And like I said, it's really hard to follow up. But it's colors.co, but it's spelt with COOLORS.co. And I'm assuming lots of analysts have heard of it, but it's the first time I've ever found it. And I was absolutely gobsmacked because it kind of makes it hard to get the color scheme wrong for a data viz if you've got that handy tool. So that was my really fun find for the week.
I've looked for that, which also over the weekend I discovered that there's a Wes Anderson palette brewer for R. Are you guys familiar with that?
No.
So it's basically you can name palettes that are different, that are all different, like Wes Anderson movies.
Jeez.
So I was actually I was going down was it R Color Brewer or whatever the main brewer one. I was looking for a good palette for some visualizations for a presentation. So I will be
nice.
That the coolers.co.
Oh, was that how you say it? Ah, got it.
Coolers? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I managed to type it in while you were saying I'm on it, I think.
Can I also just jump in and say, Mark, I do often totally nerd out after the episodes, but it has been so awesome having you on. I use so many of the packages that you've written, and you've literally hacked them to help you get your job done. And now I use those things to help me get my job done. And I just want to say, absolutely huge thank you. And thank you for the community, because some of the stuff you're building has just been amazing. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That's what keeps me making them. Having appreciation.
He's okay. He's a pretty nice guy.
Right.
Come on. And remember, if you want to meet Mark in person, come to Measure Week or Super Camp. Either one. No. Super Week or Measure Week.
I think it's super next time. Yeah.
Wait a minute. I will have to say that I pitched my session for Super Week as saying that I'm going to talk about something for those people who feel like they can't quite get to the point of Mark Edmondson, but I'm going to try to get them. And Zoe responded with, he was like, "Oh, that's a perfect description." So.
Oh no! What? No.
So I'll be doing Mark Edmondson light, and then my pitch was I'll be doing Tim Wilson light. No, I'm just kidding. So, Mark, you mentioned that you created a Slack channel. Is that something that you can share with the community?
Yeah.
Or?
I mean, just if you are using any of the R packages that are based on Google Auth R, which is pretty much all of them, then I've opened up a Slack channel which is called Google Auth R Verse. I'm not very good at naming things, as we know, but so basically it's a place to have questions and feedback, and I basically want to try and build a community up around the packages, so that because as we mentioned earlier, it is actually quite a lot of work to keep on top of all of the issues and stuff like that. So if people can help one another in that would be awesome. I don't know, you're in there, Tim. I mean,
to clarify, it's a separate Slack team, but if you anybody can, if you message any of us, anybody who's Mo and I are both in it, and the way Mark set it up, anybody can invite other people. So I regularly tell people who are asking me a question, I'm like, that would be perfect. Tell me what email you want, and it takes 2 seconds to shoot an invite. So it is a separate team, not a channel within the Measure.
It's just
team. Just to clarify. Yeah.
Just so that it didn't hit the message limit a lot, and because that's so popular Measure Slack now that you can't find stuff.
Yeah. If you're only in the Measure Slack and you've wondered what that little left sidebar that is all blank, this is your opportunity to have a second Slack team over in your sidebar.
But I've got it on at least once a day.
I'm about to find out what happens when mine starts to scroll, so I don't know.
You get a bigger
anyway,
monitor.
Ooh, I like that idea. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been delightful.
Thank you all for having me. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much.
And always for my two co-hosts, Mo and Tim, if you're out there listening, we'd love to hear from you on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, or on our website. And remember, keep analyzing.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Measure Slack group. We welcome your comments and questions. Visit us on the web at analyticshour.io, facebook.com/analyticshour, or at analyticshour on Twitter.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
So basically what you're telling us is you taught SEMO everything you know.
Tim's twitching a little bit over there. You okay, Tim? Yeah.
Don't pull a Tim Wilson.
Mine is super lame this week, but I'm excited.
Oh, Mo, what are you drinking?
When I started drinking whiskey, we had like 10 bottles in the house. I'm down to the second last, and it's like on its last legs.
And that was like last Thursday that you started? Uh-oh. You guys hearing an echo?
Echo.
If you say that at home, I've got an Amazon Echo actually, so that will just spark it off now and turn on my lights and my fridge and stuff. Yeah.
Alexa, fire up BigQuery.
Which I hadn't used in a while, and it was all fine. I was building these huge models, and life is great. And then I hit our cap, and I said to my boss, I was like, oh shit.
I keep not wanting to be the one dominating the conversation here, so I'm pausing.
Yeah, Tim. Try to let Mo ask some questions too.
I know, but this is the problem. I always ask all my questions before and after the show, and then we get to the show, and I'm like, oh god, what am I going to ask now?
But yeah, going back to what you were saying, I mean, sorry, what were you saying? Cut this bit.
I swear to God, the episodes keep going faster. Like, we get to that wrap-up point, I'm like, wow, I have like 5 questions I haven't asked yet.
I know. Tim was like, you need to start wrapping up, and I was like, F you, Tim. I've got questions.
Tim, you do this weird, like, steering of the conversation where there's, like, no natural interjection point for me. And so I'm like, shit, I'll just wait.
Wow. Oh, that hurts.
It's not mansplaining, it's man questioning. It's like...
Rock flag and Amazon. I mean, rock flag and Google.